right, if you are buying a camera in 2022, first off, congratulations, I'm very happy for you. The other cool thing is about even thinking about buying a camera in 2022, you're absolutely fit for choice. Every camera that you're thinking about buying is what I would confidently and comfortably describe as good. You see, cameras now, even phone cameras, are so good that it doesn't really matter which camera you use. It's more about what camera you like. Pretty much every camera that you decide to buy is gonna give you an amazing result. But what makes it an amazing result? That's what I want to talk about today. Well, I think the bigger conversation that I actually want to have with you guys is, here, come over here, sorry. It's not necessarily what makes a good camera, it's more about what makes a good image. And I think I actually have an answer for that. Pretty much every camera you get has basically the same stuff. Like, Sony makes all the sensors, and then everybody has their own little extra sauce that they put on the top, like Canon Color Sciences, Sony Autofocus, Panasonic's. But what actually makes the image good? And I'll tell you, it's something called dynamic range. So I'll put a little graph up on the screen so you can understand visually what dynamic range is as I talk about it. Basically, it's a measurement of how much light you can actually record between the darkest points of a specific image and the brightest points of that same image. And it's measured in something called stops, which is something. We'll go into what stops are after I do some research and understand it better myself, but just know that dynamic range is measured in stops. Now this camera, the one that I'm shooting on right now, is called the Canon C70, and in its current settings, it records anywhere between like 15 and 16 stops of dynamic range. So like this part is technically the brightest, maybe this part is technically the darkest, and in between the two of them is about 15 stops of dynamic range. Simple enough, right? And there are cameras that have more, there are cameras that have less, but I think that if you run anything above 13 is just perfect. But when we talk about like the usability of dynamic range, like it gives you so much information, especially in the shadows. And when you have all of that detail, you have this inherent need to want to, like preserve that detail. But is that the best idea? I don't think so. Like if you saw the last couple of YouTube videos that I posted, one of them was a fashion film, the other one was like a breakdown about how I did it. I'll put that link up here. I think it's up, yeah, it's up there. Better. And when I was shooting that, I really pushed the dynamic range of the camera that we were shooting on. We shot on Ursa Mini G2. So we had a lot of dynamic range, we also had a lot of resolution, more resolution than what I'm shooting in right now. We really pushed what we wanted to do with those lights. We didn't have any soft lighting, all of our lighting was directional. We also had a lot of RGB lights, so every single light was cycling through an entire rainbow of color. Basically, we had a lot of really bright highlights and a lot of very dark shadows. So I had a lot of flexibility when it came to actually editing this piece. That is the value of dynamic range, to use a pun, I guess. Oh, that was terrible. Value? Jesus. Don't subscribe. So Euphoria, the TV show, the HBO show, was the inspiration behind the aesthetic of this shoot. I found out recently that they actually shot on a certain kind of film, for season 2 at least, called Ektachrome, which is not a color negative. It's actually something called a color reversal, which is different from a negative because when you develop it, it actually produces a positive image that you can then project straight through. The thing about reversal film is that it has much lower dynamic range than negative film. Let's put this into perspective. Over here, we have like the human eye, which sees like 20 plus stops of dynamic range. Down here we have like a potato, which is 0. Right around here is where most film stocks are. Digital cameras are like anywhere between like here and here. So film, like I said, is like this higher end range right here, but reversal film is a little bit lower. Long story long, they used a film stock that actually had a shockingly small amount of dynamic range, and they used it well. So when emulating that look, I wanted to limit the dynamic range that I was actually using. So what I did in that film was I actually just crushed out a bunch of the shadows, and I limited the amount of detail that I had in the darker parts of the image. And the net result was something that I think is actually really pretty. Right, so what's the point of this entire conversation? Like, why are you actually at this video? You're wondering about dynamic range, I get that, but my point is dynamic range shouldn't be the end all be all about how you shoot your content. It should be a tool that you use to tell the right kind of story. It's just a tool. That's what it boils down to. It's just a tool. And understanding the tools is how you can use them effectively. And that's really what this video is about. I want you to understand dynamic range. Is higher dynamic range more better? Yeah, overall, I would say so. It's more about how you use that information, not just the information itself. Thanks for watching. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Peace.